All right, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. This is your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Guys, I have to admit, I feel a little tired today because I stayed up and watched the Super Bowl. And beyond that, said I was not going to have a Super Bowl party and made the mistake of just by inviting a couple of friends over because I didn't want to have a party. And lo and behold, it takes the same preparation. So I'm learning my lesson from that. But anyway, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast: Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. You can follow me on all things social media at The Carl Jackson Show. We're on X, we're on Instagram, Facebook, True Social, Getter. Wherever I am on social media at The Carl Jackson Show is where you can find me. Also, please don't forget to support my sponsor, MyPillow, Mike Lindell at MyPillow.com. Right now, they've got great deals available to all of my listeners. So for all of your continued support, Mike Lindell wants to thank you. They're having an overstock clearance sale right now for the best prices ever. All you have to do is use the promo code Carl. I spell it C-A-R-L, not like the communist Karl Marx. And you get free shipping on your entire order. You'll get 50% off the MyPillow 2.0 and the brand new flannel sheets that just arrived that won't last long. So you get a 6-pack towel set for only $29.98. And you can take advantage of the free shipping on larger items as well, like mattresses and mattress toppers, 100% made in the USA. For as low as $99.99 right now on the sell list. So that's pretty amazing. You can't beat that with a bat. 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. But you're going to be supporting American jobs, American manufacturing, an American patriot, and you're going to be getting a good night's rest. But I would encourage you, peruse the entire site. They've got so many things on sale. It's insane. And just enter my name, Carl, Radio Podcast Square at the top of the page. Click it. Enter my name, Carl, or give them a call, 800-858-0263. Okay, now, without any further ado, I met this gentleman just over a week or so ago at the Republican Lincoln Day dinner here in my town here in Orlando, Florida. And he just walked up to me and he's like, "Hey, my name is John, and I was just recently released from jail for being basically a J6 political prisoner." That's what I'm calling them. So anyway, John Nassif, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show.
Thanks for having me, Carl.
All right, John. Okay, so let's get right into this because we talked briefly before we went on air here, and oh man, and I just lost the page. Okay, here it is. We talked briefly about the DOJ's charges against you. I want to go through the story of what they charged you with, what happened on that day, right? And then let's just walk through it. All right. So here's what the DOJ says. All right. So here's this summary. Florida man was found guilty in the District of Columbia today for 4 misdemeanor charges. This was back in December of 2022, I believe. Okay, so for his actions during the J6 Capitol breach, the defendant's actions and the actions of others disrupted a joint session of the U.S. Congress convened to ascertain and count the electoral votes related to the presidential election. So here's what they charge you with, John. And I've got a question about this after I read these charges.
Sure.
Okay, so John Nassif of Chuleta, Florida, was found guilty of entering and remaining in a restricted building or grounds, disorderly and disruptive conduct in a restricted building or grounds, disorderly conduct in a Capitol building, and parading, demonstrating, or picketing in a Capitol building. Now, these are all misdemeanor charges. I want to let you respond to that. But, John, even before we go on, this is something that I find fascinating. You were jailed. I'm surprised they didn't go for the gusto on you. You have 4 misdemeanor charges. I want to know what you may have done that others didn't, or does that make sense? I'm surprised they didn't try to hang you.
They did. So they were going for 3.5 years. But even though he was a public defender, my attorney was great.
Really?
Yeah, he did a great job. I mean, I probably could have done a better job on cross-examination of their so-called witnesses.
Okay.
But but all in all, he did a really good job, especially setting up the appeal. My appeal was heard back in the end of September 29th. We still have yet to have a ruling on that. And many points that we ended up bringing up in the appeal, but probably the one that would have the biggest impact on J6ers is we appealed the constitutionality of the parading one as on the vagueness of the statute. And, the appeals attorney, also a public defender attorney, she did a fantastic job with the appeal. Really, the prosecution offered, I think, 3 or 4 explanations of their own trying to define that statute, and each one of them was different. So they kind of made the case for us. And I think that's why the appeals court hasn't come back yet, because quite honestly, what because what the federal government does is they overcharge you, right? And this is, I learned so much by being in prison.
Yeah, they do it in regular state court as well. It's a big beef of mine, but go right ahead.
They use their huge power against people who are, for the most part, poor and unable to really defend themselves. And you're given a choice: take this deal, or go to prison and prove us right by saying that you're guilty. And it's an impossible choice. I told them £3 times they offered me a deal, and all 3 times I told them to take a hike because I just wasn't having it. I wasn't going to be part of their narrative game. I knew that there are bigger forces at play. But that's besides the point. So
Actually, let me stop you, because it's a very important point, because I've heard different stories from different people. And obviously, you get into a situation like that, you're scared out of your freaking mind. You never had any problems with the law before this, have you?
No.
Okay, and honestly, this is so. Let me just be clear. We're going to go through the story, but this is total BS. All right. So for those of you in the listening audience, this is just total BS. But this is what they do. This is an issue that in my opinion, you guys know me before. Before Christ, BC, I get in trouble with the law a couple times, did some stupid stuff when I was a kid. And I always tell people a part of the issue is the power that they give prosecutors. It's got to be way worse when it comes to John's case in the federal government, because the resources are just completely endless. But you feel that same way in a state court because they're like, listen, we can go for the gusto here, and you may accept charges just so that you don't go up the river for God knows how long. And a lot of people don't understand that about the court system. And I think that's a very, very important distinction. Another thing that you said, John, that I think is very important, and again, I'm speaking to my guest, John Nassif, and we're going to let you know wherever you can go to find him. But another point, now I'm losing it. Oh, you said... You said from the beginning, you were like, no, pound sand. I'm not going to play into that narrative. I'm impressed with that, because how do you get the wherewithal to have that mentality, John, when you're in a DC court? They hate you up there. Yeah. You got some good public defendants. I don't hear that often. And sometimes I've heard from some J6 defenders, I was on an X space with several of them, that either their public defender or getting a lawyer in general proved to be worse for them. How do you respond to that?
Any lawyer that you pick is only going to be as good as involved as you are as a client. So you have to be very involved as a client. You got to remember that even when there's public defender, the lawyer is there doing a job for you, and you're the boss. I'm not saying that I told my attorney everything to do or whatever, but I was intimately involved with how I wanted to approach my case. From the second he introduced himself to me, I explained to him, when they come to you with a deal for me, the answer isn't just no, it's hell no. I use a little bit more explicit language, but wow. Yeah, because and where do I get the wherewithal for that? Two places. First, I get my strength from God, first and foremost. Um, God is truth, and if you're not standing in truth, then you're standing in lies, and if you're standing in lies, then you're standing on the side of darkness, and I'm just not going to have that. Secondly, I spent 13 years in the military, in the Army Reserve. I rose my right hand on many occasions, took the oath to the Constitution. I take that oath deeply personal and seriously. And I was willing to put a lot more on the line than just my freedom for that oath. So whatever sentence they threw at me, I was willing to deal with it because we're in,
Wow.
the easiest way for me to say it, Carl, is it wasn't about me. There's a much larger war between the light and darkness that's going on in the world. Everybody feels it. Everybody knows it. Everybody senses it.
Right.
It's one of the reasons why I wanted to approach you, because, man, this experience really has taught me so much and strengthened my faith and taken me from being a passive observer about my faith to being much more vocal. And because I've learned that, from my experience in prison, that there's so many people who need to hear not what I've got to say, but what the Holy Spirit says through me. So,
Man, I love that. And when you say God, I mean, I'm assuming you're speaking of the Lord Jesus Christ. I like to be up in, I don't like to beat around the bush when it comes to, so many people worship different gods. I just try to be straight up about the God that I'm worshiping. So it's the Lord Jesus Christ. And I'm assuming you mean the same. It would suck if you said, no, I mean Allah.
But the one Father, God, absolutely. I follow the teachings of Jesus. There's so many lies in the world, and it's Satan's job is to be the great deceiver, and those deceptions are wrapped in truth. So it makes it really difficult, especially with technology and the information world that we live in, to know that you're walking the right path and everything. So I've developed a foundation of four principles that I live by, and anything that violates those lets me know that that I'm being brought down the wrong path. And real quick, those four things are the law, the 10 Commandments.
Right.
Number 2 is the teachings of Jesus. Number 3 is the U.S. Constitution. And number 4 is the Boy Scout law, because I was a Boy Scout growing up. So
wow. Okay.
Yeah, and just so you know what the Boy Scout law is, a Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. So each one of those pillars has a role, both whether in society or personal behavior, and helps make sure that those are universal truths, regardless of how, what religion you hold on to, or, what philosophy you may have. When you take the core of each one of those four principles, it's a universal truth that is about human nature that can't be denied. And so in that way, I know that I'm secure from the lies and deception of, what other men would like to do. So
all right.
That's kind of some rules I live by.
No, I absolutely love that. And I want to get into the crux of your story, because that is a very important foundation. And I will just say this. It's no wonder that the left went so hard after the Boy Scouts of America and basically weakened them. I mean, really crippled them. I know I know a gentleman by the name of John Stemberger. He's over Florida Family Policy Council here, and he started Trail Life USA. He was a Boy Scouts leader for forever.
Right.
Took his kids through it, and then all of this stuff, transformation with the Boy Scouts started occurring with lefties getting in and absolutely trying to destroy the Boy Scouts. And now you understand why. Obviously, John, with military service and then the code of conduct by the Boy Scouts, that's very, very important. And I got to tell you this, John, just real quickly. I want to make sure we get into the story so we don't lose any audience on this. Just to be blunt, but
Sure.
every person that I've met every man that I've met that has a history with the Boy Scouts are always seemingly almost always successful, almost always very productive citizens, go-getters, if you will, leaders. I mean, it really does say something. So we appreciate your service, obviously, in the military. But even just stating that, you're going to get more known. Obviously, you're willing to speak out. You're going to get more known being a J6 protester or J6 protester and political prisoner, in my opinion. So that's what I want to get into. And I want to make sure that I pass your story along to others as well. And again, you're listening to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. My guest is John Nassif. And in my opinion, he was a J6 political prisoner. We'll get into the story. So again, just real quickly, John was found guilty of 4 misdemeanors or pled guilty to 4 misdemeanors of entering and remaining in a... You did not plead guilty. Okay.
No, I took it.
Yeah, it just says you were found guilty. All right,
Yes.
good. All right, good distinction. All right, you told them to go pound sand. So this is, all right, good. All right, so John was found guilty. Let me be clear. Thank you for that clarification. Of entering and remaining in a restricted building or grounds. That's number 1. 4 misdemeanors, guys. Number 2, disorderly and disruptive conduct in a restricted building or grounds. Number 3, disorderly conduct in a Capitol building and parading. That's what you mentioned. You and your attorney went after over the vagueness of that, which obviously was a great idea. Number 4, demonstrating or picketing in a Capitol building. All right, so let me just read this summary and then let's go through your story. Before I do this, though, John, how much time did you spend in prison?
7 months.
What did you leave behind? What did they take you from? What were you doing before the federal government said, and this is my opinion, we want to create this narrative against Trump. We want to create this narrative against Trump supporters. What did you leave behind?
I had my own consulting company. I was in the middle of getting ready to close a pretty big deal with I won't name names or anything, but a local government entity that would have saved taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars, by the way. And of course, as soon as my arrest became public, that became a problem. I lost that deal. And subsequently, running the business at that point was moot. So now I'm at a point right now where I'm currently unemployed. Going to start up my business, but at the same time, I've got to find a job because starting a business from the ground up takes time, and I don't have that time just right now. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I mean, so they totally just up.
It took a lot more than that for me, though. One thing I haven't told you yet is it was my own sister who called the FBI on me.
That's right. No, you did tell me that.
Did I tell you that?
Yeah, you did tell me that. All right.
Yes.
Okay. So I want you to hold that thought because, wow. All right. So, wow. All right. But hold that thought. Don't forget that. I just want to go through this summary, and then let's go back to your sister real quick, and then just respond to this summary if you would. All right. So this is the summary according to the DOJ, guys. All right. According to the government's evidence on J6, John Nassif, of Tuliola, Florida, attended the Stop the Steal rally on the ellipse of the National Mall. Nassif then marched to the Capitol building to protest Congress's certification of the presidential election results. After accompanying his friends back to their hotel, Nassif returned to the east side of the Capitol, and that there's some significance there, so I want you to explain that. At approximately 3:01 p.m., Nassif entered the restricted area on the east front plaza of the Capitol. He joined a large crowd outside a door on the east front. Nassif observed police officers pushing people back from the door and closing it. The windows in the door were broken and an alarm was ringing. Nassif heard other members of the crowd shout, "Why the F can't we come in? And it's going to take an army to remove us," close quote. Nassif turned to the crowd and yelled, "Whose house?" quote unquote. The crowd shouted back, "Our house." Nassif repeated this chant 6 times. That's their story. And they're sticking to it, obviously.
Yeah, that's partially correct. It's partially correct. So I'll just take you through, yes, went to Let's Stop the Steal rally. I was there with some other people, 2 ladies and a former coworker. Ended up, we went to Soldiers Park, which is across from the reflection pond by the Capitol. I was about a quarter mile away from the Capitol because we were told, as you and your listeners probably know, that we were going to patriotically and peacefully protest. We were expecting more words to be said because the president said, "Hey, I'm going to be coming down there too." So we're expecting another speech. Went down there. There were so many people there. I can't even tell you. That's one thing that
I heard estimates of 1 million.
Oh, that or more. I mean,
okay.
And if you've ever been to a Trump rally, which is just filled with love and positive energy, and it was like 1 million plus people with that kind of energy. That's the kind of day I had before everything went goofy.
Wow.
So it was like really an amazing experience for the most part of the day. So we hung out there for a while. We couldn't get, because there were so many people there. There was no internet access, so you couldn't get anything. We couldn't find out what was going on. Finally, somebody in the crowd said that Pence had said that he wasn't going to, allow there to be conversation about, and that's the other thing. We weren't there to protest the certification. That is not what we were there. We were there to support the Constitution, because the Constitution specifically gives remedies for when there is potential questions and illegalities that happen in the states, because it gives the states the area of responsibility when it comes to the election. So basically what's supposed to happen in the Constitution, and it's happened before, I think in 1840 or in the 1840s, there was a precedent in, I think it was South Carolina, where basically there was an issue about, some shenanigans that happened there. So what's supposed to happen is you go and the Congress says, okay, well, hey, the electors from this state, there were some issues. We're going to send this back to the state legislature, and they're going to decide and resolve this issue, and then they can decide which slate of electors are correct and then send it back to us. That's how it's supposed to work. And we were there demanding that the Constitution be followed, not protesting the certification, not trying to stop what was going on. That was actually antithetical to what we wanted to have happen. We didn't want to stop what was happening. We wanted it to continue. That's one of the core things about what the government argues. That is the first lie. The first lie is that no one was there to try and stop what was happening. We were there trying to make it continue. It's completely opposite. And they don't want to talk about that, because then That's
a good point. That's a good point, because you keep society dumb. You keep people
absolutely.
Dumbed down, and you keep half
they
of the
don't want
country
the
hating you.
conversation about the election to come up, because then you have to actually talk about things they don't want to talk about. So as we found that out from Pence, it had been a long day. Our day started at like 5 o'clock in the morning, because we wanted to be able to get pretty good location at the Ellipse. So I walked the ladies and my friend back to the hotel, because I wanted to make sure that they were safe. There was lots of talk about Antifa and people going to be there to try and create problems and stuff like that. So I made sure everybody got back to the hotel. That was a good, half hour, 40-minute walk back to the hotel. So from leaving Soldiers Park back to the hotel and then back again, and on the way back to the hotel, we started hearing rumors that something was going on at the Capitol. People had going inside and something was up. So I'm there. rather than rely on the lying media to tell me what's happened, I decided, well, let me go see what's going on. I'll
Right.
go take a look. And I asked if anybody else wanted to come with me, and they're like, nope. And I was like, okay. So we took them back to the hotel, did a 180, headed back towards the Capitol. Takes another 30, 40 minutes to go back to the Capitol, right? So by the time I arrive on the Capitol property, it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is an hour. When you watch the video of all the craziness that happened on the West Side, that's like an hour after all of that mayhem even happened. When I roll up on the scene, first off, there's no
wait. Yeah, okay. So I want to make sure that people hear that. You're saying this, by the time you roll up on the scene, the chaos had already taken place.
I didn't witness a single act of violence the entire day. I didn't see one single thing.
And another thing that people have to understand, the Capitol is massive. I mean, people have literally, you will not know what's going on from one side of the Capitol to the other. I mean, if you've never been to Washington, D.C., the Capitol is massive. People do not get that. So you could totally have something going on one side of the Capitol that wasn't going on the other side, and you would never know. And that definitely played to the left's advantage of setting this narrative.
Yeah, so like when I roll up on the property, there's no fences, there's no signs, there's no cops. There's people hanging out on the grass like it's a Sunday afternoon in the park in the center of town, just kind of hanging out. Some people are having prayer vigils. It's almost like, I was expecting some people be picnicking and stuff. It was just completely chilled and relaxed. I'm following people because there's a stream of people heading towards the Capitol. I followed them up around to the east side. I didn't go to the west side for a couple reasons. One, there was some scaffolding I could see from my vantage point. It looked like there was construction there. So I figured that side was closed. So I didn't even negotiate towards that part of the Capitol for that reason. And then came up around the, what would be the north end of the Capitol, came around. And this is all on video. All of it's on video, right? You can see there's no barriers. All of this was, and it was presented in court, right? In fact, the judge was like, you didn't see, because there was some bike racks that were like piled up over in a corner somewhere, right?
Yeah.
The only way you would know that is by going back and watching the video after the fact, and someone having to circle it and point to it. You know what I mean? On the scene, I'm not analyzing the scene as I'm walking up like, what's going on here? You know what I mean? Sure. You didn't see those? And I was like, of course not, But he kept, when I was at Soldiers Park, I took a picture from a quarter mile away, had zoomed into the Capitol, right? And you could see barriers there. And he was, you didn't see that? And I was like, well, of course not. It was a quarter mile away. And that was fully zoomed on my camera. I wasn't analyzing my photo at the time. You know what I mean? I was just taking a picture. Anyways, I digress. So as I roll up on the scene, there's police officers out in front of I think it's the Senate building on that side, in the Senate or the House. And they're in riot gear and everything, but they're silently standing there. No one's interacting with them at all. And I look at it and it just looks like, okay, that's where you're not supposed to go. Right. Are, and they're not like they're like a wall of people. They're interspersed, every few yards or whatever. So I go up the east side steps towards the rotunda doors, and I think they call it the Columbus doors. And by the way, that door is massive. Number one.
Yeah.
Its locking
Thousands
mechanism.
of pounds.
Yeah, its locking mechanism is a magnetic lock. It would take a tank to open that thing up. In my discovery, which by the way, every single January 6er, before you got your discovery, you had to sign an NDA saying that you would not let anybody see the video, any of the information from your discovery. You would not share it with anybody under penalty of felony. That's what they want to protect that video. They don't want anybody to see it. That's why the Speaker of the House still hasn't released it. When I spoke to Rick Scott that night, I implored upon him about that. He was like, "Man, I don't know why they won't release that." It's because they got something to hide, and they definitely do. Because I'll tell you my discovery. Just quick, aside. In my discovery, when those doors were originally opened, you can see from the Capitol inside video, you can see a gentleman who's obviously a cop because he's inside the Capitol, right? Right. While everybody else is outside, dressed in MAGA gear, and he rolls up on the door. I think some of this is out there on Revolver, Revolver.news. They did a great job covering the J6 stuff. But he looks up to the camera, hidden camera, which nobody knows where it's at, right? But he looks up to the camera and he makes a motion to the camera, points to the door, because there's a guy in a security room who has to press a button to undo that maglock.
Okay.
Right? It's the only way that door opens up. Someone's not going to pull that thing open. So the cops unlock the door, opens it up. Another cop comes running into frame, whispers in this guy's ear. The other cop comes running up like, hey, you got to close the door. The guy in the MAGA gear.
Was this other cop dressed in cop?
He was dressed as a Capitol police officer.
Okay.
He comes running up to the door. You can tell he's a cop, no question about it. He comes running up to the door like, "Hey, what are you doing?" You can there's no audio, so because it's all CCTV, but you can tell from his mannerisms. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing? Open the door." The guy in the MAGA gear whispers to the cop, and the cop backs off. They open the door, and the people just flood in.
Wow.
Just flood in.
Honestly, I've heard similar stories from Brandon Strzok of the Walk Away campaign. I interviewed him not too long ago, and he talked about those huge double doors as well. And he stood away taking video, and they came after him because he could set a narrative that totally debunked their narrative, the left's narrative. That's what I'll say. The people in there. Just real quick, I want to make sure we get this in because I said I'd come back to it before we go any further here. All right. So for one, just quickly, how much time did you end up spending behind bars in prison for this?
7 months.
Okay.
For 8.5 minutes. I think it was 8.5 or 9 minutes in the foyer. I never went beyond the foyer except for about 30 seconds where I got pushed into the rotunda. But I was in the foyer the whole time.
Okay.
And I spent about 7.5 minutes trying to get out.
We'll get insane. We'll get to that. I mean, this stuff is just, oh man, God, our government is just, guys, this is what the left does. It's divide and conquer. They'll get you to hate John. All right, because you vote Democrat, they want you to think a fellow American is evil. They've done something nefarious. That way, they can retain power for themselves. You hate them, and then the left comes in. Democrats come in to save the day. We'll protect you from these big evil guys like John, and so vote for us. They don't intend to do anything to empower you or to better your lives. They just want power. So it's divide and conquer. That's what we understand. Now, let me ask this. Your sister turned you in, all right? Yeah. What the heck? Did you guys have a good relationship before this? That does not make any sense to me whatsoever.
We were divided due to politics prior to this happening, as well as my children. And it started back during the Trayvon Martin. That's when the rift between us. My nieces all started calling me a fascist and a Nazi and a racist and all these crazy things. I'm an individualist. It's impossible for me to be any of those things because all of those things are collectivisms. They're forms of
None of the people saying that ever know what they don't. They have no understanding. No. They're just parrots.
And to be honest, the attacks from my family became so intense, I because again, I believe in,
Sure.
Satan's the great deceiver. And I was like, man, am I being, maybe they're right, because I
Right.
mean,
Sure.
the backlash was so intense. So I studied. I'm a little bit of a nerd like that. So I went and I went and read the book by Mussolini called The Doctrine of Fascism. It's 50
Wow.
pages. I recommend your whole audience read that
Okay.
because it was so enlightening. Because the definition of fascism basically is the tenets of modern liberalism. If you, for those who don't know, liberalism is about the individual. It's about individualism, small government,
Sure.
no tyranny. But in the 50s or the 60s, they changed that. They put an adjective in front of liberalism, called it modern liberalism, because they had a better way of doing liberalism. Well, that modern liberalism is fascism. It is fascism. And while you're at it, everyone should study Butler versus the USA in 1933, because it changed the definition of Article 1, Section 8, the enumerated powers clause of the Constitution, and essentially made us a fascist nation. That's one thing I wanted to make sure I got out today, is because the core, I'm a problem solver. That's what I do in my business. I help businesses not just solve the symptoms from problems, but be able to pull it up from the root so that it's gone forever. So when I investigate something, that's the way that I go about doing it. And what I found is that the core source of many of our ills today come from that case. And maybe you'll have me on another day, because I can talk an hour about that. But so my sister and I were already having issues prior to this happening. In fact, we hadn't spoken to each other in over a year when this happened. How she knew I was at the Capitol, I have no idea. But her and another one of my sisters worked in tandem to report me to the FBI. So the FBI came to my property while I wasn't here, and that was when I first had my first tinge of fear. But I prayed on it, and then I came to accept what is. There's only two things in life you have control over: yourself and now. It's the only thing you can control. Everything else that you try to control is futile. You can influence things outside of yourself and now, but you can only control yourself and now. And that's one of the tenets I live by. And once I prayed on that and thought about it, I just accepted what was about to happen and saw that I was going to be used as God's instrument, quite frankly. And so I accepted my fate, but decided that I was just going to stay in the light, and fight for the truth, regardless of the consequences. Because all I can do is control me and now. So that's what I focused on, and that's what got me through prison. And quite frankly, prison was a piece of cake. It was, if anything, it was a privilege, and it was a really positive experience. It certainly didn't rank in the top 5 of the worst things that's ever happened to me in my life, but. I had the opportunity to do some good works there. But back to the story. So I rolled up on these doors. I could see something had happened before I got there. They're right. There were some windows broken. The fire alarm was going off. But there was people rolling in the door, and there was people rolling out of the door, in and out.
Right.
So when I got up there, I'm like, what's going on? And some people, they're like, some people, broke some windows, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, they're letting people in. They're like, if you want to. And I was like, oh, hell no. I didn't want to go in. But I did want to catch on video. I figured they're going to, be perp walking out these people. I'm expecting Antifa people, you know what I mean?
Wow. Right. Sure.
To be brought out. So I figured, so I hung out up there. And then 2 people got into a scuffle right there at the door. And and we're admonishing the guy who's scuffling with the cop, because there was a cop in the doorway and this guy's scuffling with the cop. So the crowd's yelling at the dude that's wrestling with the cop. That guy identifies himself to me and the people around me as a police officer. He was like, "Oh, I thought the police officer. I'm an officer as well. I thought he was in trouble," and which was just weird at the time. I didn't think much about that. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just thought, wow, okay, so it was a misunderstanding, whatever. But that was weird. And then they pulled the doors closed. In the story, that the narrative that the government says, the crowd yelled, "Let us in," and there was one dude. There was one dude who said that, who said both of those statements. It wasn't the crowd saying that. One dude out of the thousands that were standing there. I just looked at him like, okay, you're a nut, an unruly, emotional nut job. Yeah, I didn't think much about him. Did I lead a chant of Youth House? I absolutely did lead a chant of Youth House. I'm on the state. I'm on the Capitol steps. It's supposed to be the bastion of free speech, right?
Right. Right.
The place is known as the People's House. Hello. And the thing that motivated me to do the chant was because somebody had done a chant just prior to that, and they did a really horrible job of it. I mean, this is how silly the whole thing is to me, right? So, like, I thought, well, I can do a better job than that. You know what I mean? So that's the reason why I did that. You know what I mean? Because the guy did a crappy job of it. So, and I did a much better job of it. You know, it's all about the timing. You know, you gotta come right back with the Who's House when they're done with. You know what I mean? Anyways, so that was my motive. Of course, they were trying to say, "Oh, you were being an insurrectionist by doing that." Whatever. So the doors open back up again. Again, the cops open the doors because nobody can open them but the cops. By the way, just to my right by the door, there's a window completely broke open. If I wanted to walk into the Capitol, I could have gone through the window and gone into the Capitol. Everybody could have, but nobody did that. Nobody was looking to do that. They were only going through the doorways. So I'm by the door. I'm a big dude. I'm 6'4", 250 pounds. I'm by the door, videotaping. And, while the doors were closed, and this was on video, again, part of my trial, there was some kind of metal pole there, and some dude wanted to use it to try and open the door. And I'm on video saying, no, that's a weapon. That would be considered a weapon. That changes everything, which of course goes to my frame of mind. I'm obviously don't believe bad things are happening if it changes everything. You know what I mean? Right. That's on video. It's my own video of me. You can hear my own voice on my own video. I'm like, what are you? That's crazy. That's crazy talk. That's a weapon. No. And so I stopped this guy from doing this, right? So the doors open back up. People are going in and out. Next thing you know, I feel I'm being pushed into the building. And I'm holding on to the door. I've got one hand holding on to the door because the doors open out, right? So my hand is around the door, and I'm trying to keep myself from being pushed in. I end up succumbing to what's being pushed. At the time, I thought it was the crowd that pushed me in. Well, upon my discovery, I learned that 5 police officers came up from behind me in stack formation, and it was the police officers who forced me into the building. You can even see on the video, one of the cops wraps his arm around my torso because I'm resisting going inside the building so much by holding onto the door that he has to take me by the body and rip me off the door to force me to go in. And as soon as I do that, my hands go up, and I'm like a leaf in the wind as I go in. I'm being spun around. Now, supposedly, for the 1.4 seconds that I turned around and was facing these officers, I was supposed to know that the people who pushed me in were police officers. They actually froze the video in my trial. Over and over and over again, they would show the screenshot of me after having been spun around in this mayhem, right? So you didn't know those were officers? No, I had no idea. In fact, I didn't even know until I saw my discovery. So I get pushed into the building.
Were there any other people around? We have about 10 minutes, so I want to make sure that we get all of the rest of the details in as quickly as possible. So were there any other people around those police officers at the time? Was there a crowd around?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But the crowd, moved out of the way for the cops. I mean, if you saw the video, they literally came up in a single stack formation behind me and forced their way and pushed me into the Capitol. I got pushed into an officer, and I said, "I'm sorry, it's not me. They're pushing me." He tells me, "You're good. You're all good." I get into the foyer, and I'm like, "Oh," but I'm looking around. It's completely peaceful. I got probably 8, 9 cops around me. No one says, "Hey, you need to get out of here," or whatever. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So in the minute and a half I'm in there of indecision, I'm like, "Oh, so it's cool to be in here." My big mistake, Carl, okay, after I get pushed in there, I'm like, after I realize, oh, well, I don't realize, but at that point, I'm like, okay, it's kosher to be here because nobody's making a big deal. I'm, surrounded by police officers, nobody's saying anything. I motioned to the people who I was standing next to, yeah, it is okay to come in. Come on in. You know what I mean? And they have that on camera. So that made me the villain, right? And when I saw that discovery, I was like, oh, I'm screwed. And then another scuffle between what looked like 2 police officers happens again over by the.
That is just weird. That is just weird.
It was really weird, man. But so I see the scuffle between what looks like 2 officers. I take video of it and everything, and I decide, okay, this is sketchy. I need to get out of here. This is about a minute and a half after being pushed into the building. So I spend the next 7+ minutes trying to get the hell out of there, right? The whole time I'm in there, I'm a big dude, and I'm not a moron. I know that there's cameras around, right? I want to make sure everybody knows I'm not like trying to push her. I got my hands up pretty much the whole time in the video, or my hands are like this, right? Showing that I'm not being actively aggressive or anything. I get pushed into the foyer. In the foyer, I almost get crushed to death. I don't learn until I go to trial that's because after I got pushed into the foyer, they closed the doors, and on the other side of the doors, there was cops pressing the crowd up against the wall, supposedly trying to force us out. But they closed the doors. I thought I was going to die. I actually got pretty emotional during my testimony about it. Because it was frightening. I was, you're in a real thick crowd. Bad things can happen, Sure. So, they opened the doors back up. I helped the woman get up because she fell down, protected her from getting trampled, and finally was able to, escape out of there or whatever. In the process of trying to get out, I bump into the very same cop that I bumped into on the way in when they pushed me in. Right. And he was like, "Hey, I thought we were good with each other." I was like, "Man, I'm just trying to get the F out of here." And he laughed, ha 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 ha. We're all good. There was no anyways. And then I get out and I went back to the hotel. That was the gist of what happened that day. Wow. That was all of it. Oh, they used an Alex Jones video. This guy in an Alex Jones video, as he's exiting out, says something like "Keep on fighting," and there you can see me in the video. I'm talking to people as they're coming out, and trying to find out what was going on. And you can tell a 5-year-old could tell. It looked like a Godzilla movie if you compared my mouth moving to the words coming out on this video, but the judge, because I went with a bench trial, because I knew there was no way I'd get a fair jury, so I rolled the dice with the bench trial. Hopefully the judge would have some mooring to the actual rule of law, but of course that turned out to be a farce as well. Honestly, I would have done the same thing. Sadly, but okay. One thing that people don't realize: not one single defendant has been allowed to get a change of venue, and that's important because in D.C., pretty much everybody there either works for the government, right, or is related to somebody who works for the government. And 95% of the people there vote Democrat and hate you if you're a Republican. Well, beyond that, and that's absolutely true. But beyond that, remember, it's the U.S. it's the government versus me, right? So the jury pool is made up of people who belong to the people who are against me, That on its merits, all by itself, should disqualify DC as a place for these trials to be had, because they're part of the victim, the victim, right? You wouldn't that wouldn't be allowed in any other court case. Could you imagine? There's people on the jury from the family of the victim of somebody. You know what I mean?
Very important point. I mean, this would be so easy for Republicans to do if they were to, hopefully regain control of the Senate. I think they can do it from the House now, quite frankly, and they should. But if you're coming from out of state, there's no way you should be, unless you commit a crime as in theft or murder or rape or something like that in the city itself. But you should be charged by city officials, not the U.S. government, for God's sakes, or the federal government. Otherwise, you should be charged or tried in front of a jury of your peers, wherever you happen to be from. And they can do that very easily. But anyway.
If I had been of different political leanings, they would have given me a civil fine of $75 and sent me on my way.
Yeah, for misdemeanors. Yeah. First time offense, misdemeanors. You're not going to federal prison. All right, that isn't happening, folks. All right, so this was obvious to create a narrative. I do need to wrap up, but I want to make sure that you share your experience inside of prison. And you had some ideas about reform and the things that you were able to do inside of prison. You said earlier that prison was a cakewalk. Not a lot of people can fathom that, John. So let's get into that. I want to try to keep this within 5 minutes or so, but I want you to pack in as much as possible. Why do you say that? Prison was a cakewalk. What did you experience there? What did you try to do while you were in there?
Prison is life without all the pretense. So long as you're not a lying, cheating, backstabbing, stealing, lying MFer, and you treat people with respect, prison is fine. When you're not those things is when it becomes an issue. All those things are the core of who I am, as I explained earlier. And God has a way of shining through you so that others see the real you when you embrace Him. I had the full armor of God on during that whole time, and just prayed that I'd be used as His instrument. And you're allowed to get. By the way, there's huge support for Trump in prison. Like, it doesn't matter if you're black, Hispanic, white, doesn't matter. Like, there's huge support for Trump because, Trump was the one who made the First Step Act possible. And everybody in there is trying to work the First Step Act so they can get out a little bit earlier.
Man, that's a great point.
And they all know that whole race thing is just BS. They all, because, again, life in prison is life itself, but without all the pretense and lies and stuff. Things just are what they are. And so I got a job as a GED tutor in there. It's one of the I was hoping he'd be able to knock a little bit of time off of my sentence using the First Step Act. Turns out I had to be sentenced a year or longer for it to apply, but it doesn't matter. So I got to be a GED tutor, and in the process, there was a group of guys there. The GED basically 90% of it is reading comprehension, and as I got into it, I was the tutor, but there was no teacher. I could do a whole program on the corruption and idiocy of the Bureau of Prisons itself. They just want people in the seats because then they get extra money for it, right? They don't care if these guys get the GED and whether they're taught or whatever. And I was like, okay, well, where's the lesson plan? You make that up. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And no materials, nothing like that. So I'm serious, but I want to make a difference. Whatever I do, I'm going to do it my best. I want to do it well. So I give everybody a pretest, and I learned right away that the reading skills are horrible. I mean, third grade or less. It was pretty bad. So I decided, you know what? We're just going to work on reading. I'm going to teach folks how to read. Explain that to the class. Tried to get dictionaries. They wouldn't allow dictionaries. So at the time, I had a person who was managing my phone on the outside, and I had like 80 plus followers before I went in. By the way, I have to say, thank God for the people in my life. You know, there were opposers in my life. That was the best thing about prison. Going to prison was it separated the wheat from the chaff in my life. I knew who was who. Everybody revealed themselves, including my sister, including my children, unfortunately. And I realized who truly loved me for me, and who didn't. So so these folks gave money to my commissary. I want to strongly encourage everybody to find a J6er from your community and find out how you can give to their commissary. The commissary is the difference between suffering and not in prison. So if there's a way that you can give to their commissary, find a J6er to support. If you don't want to send it to an organization because you think they're sketchy, that's fine. You can find that individual on bop.gov. Find out where they're at, find out what their number is and how to contribute. But even $20 to their commissary it's a big deal. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
So anyways, I put out a request to my followers saying, hey, I need some dictionaries, because you're allowed to send books to people in prison. It's just got to come straight from like Amazon or wherever you order it from. You can't send it from home. So I asked for some dictionaries. Next thing I know, I had like 48 dictionaries sent to me.
No way.
And they wouldn't let me have them. They wouldn't let me have them. They gave me 12 of them, and the rest of them they sent back. And it actually sparked an internal investigation by the gang unit because I got some dictionaries sent. And the sad thing is I told them all in advance I was trying to get these dictionaries. So I get the dictionaries, pocket dictionaries. I taught these guys how to use the dictionary, how to use the phonetics in it and everything. Long story short, because I know we're short on time, before I left, they were reading at a 9th grade level or better. And in fact, they were having problems with understanding certain concepts such as implied meaning and stuff like that. So then we started, in the end, we were studying poetry. Dickinson and Thoreau, so that they could understand what it means to have an implied meaning to something. Wow. And I made reading part of their daily. The first rule was you have to always have your dictionary on you, and you have to be reading a book every day. Doesn't matter. And they started off reading like really little children's books from the prison library. But by the time I left, like I said, they were reading like 9th grade level stuff. The most challenged reader amongst them maybe could knock out a few pages in a night. Before I left, he was knocking out a few chapters in a night. So I was really proud of that. And to be honest with you, it made leaving prison difficult. It was hard to leave prison. I almost didn't want to go because I felt like I had a calling. I needed to be there. And as soon as I'm allowed to associate with felons again, because I'm on probation for a year, I'm not allowed to associate with known felons while I'm on probation. But as soon as that moratorium's up, I plan on getting involved with helping inmates learning how to read, because this is a pervasive issue. If you can't read, you're a slave.
You know what?
You're a slave.
I somehow, listen, I somehow, some way, maybe it's just bringing more attention to it. I would love to be a part of that. Let's do this. Let's leave it here. I want to have you back. Actually, I would like to have you back perhaps later this week, or we'll get you booked next week. I kind of want to do a part 2. All right. So let's go through the prison system, how it can be reformed. Let's just pick it up from where we left off. I'm gonna let you be responsible for that, John, because I'm gonna forget. I'm not gonna lie to you. All right, but let's pick it up from where you left off. How do we make prison reform better? Because guys, listen, and I'm not a big fan of the First Step Act. I've talked about this before, but it obviously it has its benefits as well. But I really do believe, listen, man, there's some people that go to prison and all they learn to do is to become better criminals.
The system is literally set up to do that. The way that they treat the prisoners is designed to perpetuate the system. It's amazing how much it's like that.
And it's important for people to know that. I mean, people can come out of prison and they can do better. But when you have a system where it isn't designed to do that, it's really, really important that we touch on that. So we'll touch on that from a J6 political prisoner the next time we have John Nassif back. But John, listen, I do want to just thank you for being willing to be a vessel and allowing God to use you in this particular situation. I mean, obviously, it is a horrible situation. You've lost a lot. You're rebuilding your career. You've lost family, obviously, your friends as well. But I do believe that God is going to use you mightily, and whatever part I can play in that, I want to certainly be. I want to certainly be a part of that. Listen, I'm a guy who, by the grace of God, God radically changed my life, turned my life upside down. The transformation was so quick that I mean, it was. I lost people. I lost a relationship at the time with my daughter's mother. I mean, that's how quick I went from being this guy that was just so worldly and just godless, but had a brain on his shoulder to like I can't live this way. I can't. I mean, it was so crazy that people that friends, family members, just like you. I didn't want as much to do with me. I'll put it that way. And it was just like, holy crud, man. Sometimes just turning to God can be like your situation in jail. It separates the friends from the foes pretty quickly. So anyway, but we'll get back to this. I can go on. I can go on about this stuff forever too. But this story is absolutely fascinating. I want to hear the reforms. I want to hear the indictments on these. Honestly, there's good cops and there's bad cops, guys. All right, just like in any industry. All right. And so we need to hear about that too. I don't want to do a generalized show of bashing cops, but we need to understand there's some things that happen in the system that people need to be aware of. And if you want to create safer environments for people when people get out of jail or prison, it's an important conversation to have. So I appreciate you, John. Appreciate what you've done and how you've allowed God to use you. And I got a feeling we're going to see a lot more of you. So appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you let me come on, Carl.
Absolutely. So stay there. Let's make sure we get you uploaded. But I want to tell all of you in the listening audience, just a reminder to actually, let's do that. Where can people find you online, John? Is there anywhere you're on social media or whatever? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on X as Big John Nassif.
Okay.
So that they can find me. Nassif. I'm on True Social just as John Nassif.
Okay.
So you can find me. I'm not allowed to be on Facebook anymore. I'm banned from life on the day of my arrest. Facebook.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter. Facebook censors me so much. It's a joke. My numbers have not moved in God knows how long. And then they give me
Facebook's a real passe. Yeah, the only thing I used it for was to promote the band that I was in at the time. By the way, I'm a musician as well. So
okay, all right. Yeah. All right, good stuff, man. All right, so at Big John Nassif, Nassif on X, you can find him there. Also on True Social, you can find him as John Nassif, as you heard him say. And guys, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to the podcast, share this podcast. All right, what needs to happen, and it's sad, but J6ers need to be humanized. This narrative that they're these evil insurrectionists and they wanted to just overthrow the government. Nothing could be further from the truth. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't some idiots there. Obviously, John saw broken glass and the bike rail. So obviously there's always going to be some idiots and people that just, but even them, sometimes you get caught up in the moment and it's like, oh my God. And then if you have police officers and public officials that are trying to encourage you to do that, I don't want to say that those people are innocent. They're not. All right. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying, just like any one of us, you can get caught up in a situation where you're like, I can't believe I did that. And many of these J6ers experience that. I'm not excusing them, but that can happen. I do want to put that out there. But nonetheless, they weren't trying to overthrow the government, guys. They didn't take weapons to do it. They got caught up in the moment. And the left was ready to take advantage of that, and they did exactly They did exactly that. But anyway, having said that, listen, guys, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. Find me on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Please share this on YouTube and Rumble. Review it there. You give us a high score. I believe it's a 5. That's going to help us get more attention, and we would certainly appreciate that. Also, please support Mike Lindell at mypillow.com. Use the promo code Carl, C-A-R-L. Guys, for me, this isn't about money. If you knew how little money I make in this industry right now, you would be like aghast. I really feel like this is my calling to make sure that I'm fighting for this country. I truly, God's honest truth, I sincerely believe that. I believe that this is the greatest country that God has ever given man, and it is our duty. It is our duty to preserve it. So that's what I am fighting for. So anyway, appreciate you, John Nassif. For those of you in the audience, until next time, do not grow weary doing good. God bless you.